Psychedelics have been a taboo topic in a large part of our world for a very long time now. Since the US Controlled Substances Act in 1971, it has been very difficult to study or even talk about these substances. Recently, however, there have been three types of new discourses around psychedelics: the medical one, the neo-spiritual one, and the success one. First of all, in academia, there is a lot of talk about the medical benefits of the substances that have been prohibited from studying for all this time, and researchers are finally carrying out experiments with them. Secondly, there's more and more neo-spiritual discourse around the casual use of psychedelics, as there are psychedelic societies being opened in many European capitals, which organize psychedelic meetings. Thirdly, many successful entrepreneurs, such as Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, have been coming forward, arguing that psychedelics have played an important role in their success. This, in addition to the already existing celebrities inspired by psychedelics, such as the Beatles, Jack Nicholson, or Allen Ginsberg, just strengthened the narrative. Although these three discourses definitely do exist, they might not be as widespread as academia thinks. For example, what about Eastern Europe?
As international students in one of the world's most liberal cities, we were confronted by mixed emotions when we told our friends and family in Hungary and Croatia that we study about psychedelics at university. Some thought it was super interesting, while others thought it was a joke. And we can't blame them. They grew up only knowing about psychedelics as problematic drugs, or drugs their peers take for fun, so even the idea of studying about their medical, spiritual, or entrepreneurial benefits at a university is very abstract for them. We had a similar reaction when we were presented with the three new discourses around psychedelics. We couldn't really relate to those simply because the only source where we read about those discourses was the internet and Western media. We wanted to investigate whether Eastern Europe is really lacking behind on the new discourses around psychedelics. We started with carrying out interviews with Eastern European students studying in Amsterdam about how they were socialized into psychedelics and how psychedelics are talked about in their countries.
First time I've heard about psychedelics was sometime during high school. Coming from Slovakia and coming especially from the East, drugs have a very negative connotation there, and if you mention drugs, whether it is marijuana, psychedelics or whatever, people have a general association that it's something that you do when you just want to mess up your life and when you want to lose control, and that's what will basically lead you to heroin and all the bad stuff.
Throughout the middle school and obviously primary school, we didn't really have a distinction between psychedelics and hard drugs, or just any distinction between any different types of drugs. So we're just presented with one idea of, yeah, drugs is bad, don't ever try it, you will die, or like you'll get expelled, and just a lot of scary stories about people that did it.
Nowhere except for at home was I presented with the idea. Nobody spoke of it. People only spoke about maybe weed.
I've heard, when I was younger, I've heard much more about other types of drugs than psychedelics. That it's not, like, you know that it's there, right now you know that it's there, but in terms of like usage, maybe, it's not that kind of like famous between people.
I haven't heard of anything in Slovakia. Nothing formal or well, not really informal either.
No, not really. Definitely not a culture that is set towards raising consciousness, for example. That's definitely not the case in Russia, because in Russia people usually do drugs to forget. I have heard about people who go into the forest and just pick mushrooms and do them, but I haven't heard about anybody using it for like being conscious and aware.
I haven't heard of any spiritual groups in Serbia doing drugs. I know that LSD is in circulation, mostly in the bigger cities of Serbia. Serbian people are very scared of drugs. Even weed is still considered taboo there. So acid is also very taboo, but younger people are more, open-minded, so it's in circulation. Not in a spiritual way, not that I've heard of, maybe.
Well, definitely. So I would say the primary The primary shifter in my head was when I just realized that some of the drugs, like for example truffles, they're pretty much legal here in the Netherlands. And with legality, I think a big part of my perception changed, especially coming from Slovakia, where I feel like there is quite a strong culture of obedience towards the state, and when you believe that what the government does actually makes sense, or at least I'm hoping. And I realized that, oh yeah, you know, if marijuana or psychedelics are actually legal to an extent, it's gotta be for a reason, and maybe it's not, you know, as bad.
When I came here, everybody was much more relaxed about it. And even though I was primarily using it in Russia, I would be talking about it primarily here.
For me, like definitely Amsterdam, Netherlands, it gives you the opportunity to explore it a bit more because of its legality, and also you can check your own drugs, so it also helps. So in that sense, it maybe pushed me a bit more towards trying to experience a bit more than what I do in Prague.
In my opinion, it definitely has changed. Well, I discovered such a thing, and I mean, I have quite a positive view in it, especially knowing that it helps sort of people to fight depression, just to find the meaning in life again.
My view on psychedelics is that it can be beneficial to people. It can also be very fun. There's something about the way it works that's really fascinating, and I understand why people would think it can be used in a lot of different medical, you know, ways, as well as having fun. Because technically, what say LSD does to you when you're tripping is it connects all different parts of your brain that usually wouldn't talk to each other.
Definitely there was some bias from that side. Also coming from a family where my parents would be quite strict against these things, never experiencing marijuana or something. I come from a culture where alcohol is the normal common drug, but if you do something else, you're considered a junkie. So that's the predisposition in my mind that I kind of had also when I was going through high school. Then it was starting to change, but it's still, that mindset kind of still stays in your head.
I think that's the prime, the basis of my fears to actually try it. We also, you know, we think, oh, what my mom would say, you know, because like she grew up in USSR, you know, so they have quite radical views on everything. So
my opinion on psychedelics per se changed from I don't know enough and I'm too scared to even like ask because nobody really wants to talk about it. So I'll just avoid it. It went from that to you know, meeting people that have experienced it already, meeting people that have positive opinions about it, meeting people that have negative opinions about it, feeling inclined to do my own research, doing that, and then finally at one point feeling like, okay, now I have a decent understanding of how this all functions, and I'm comfortable enough to try it myself.
After talking to Eastern European students who moved to the West, we've also decided to analyze the media headlines connected to psychedelics. We met up on Zoom and compared Hungarian and Croatian headlines to British and American ones, and looked at the general reaction in the comments. In the Hungarian and Croatian media outlets, the articles were mostly in connection to crimes, and there were some articles that were confessions from former drug abusers who depict LSD as living hell. There were also many connections to death. For example, the only article we found about ayahuasca from a Croatian media outlet was about an 18-year-old dying from it in Peru. Finally, there were also some articles that explored the new ideas around psychedelics, mainly the medical and entrepreneurial benefits. However, when examining the comment section on a Hungarian article that claimed LSD could help fight depression, although there were some supportive comments, we still saw comments that said things like, "Of course you're not depressed if you don't even know what the f*** is going on," and "Is everybody insane here?" Furthermore, when researching for LSD on bbc.co.uk, out of the 8 articles that came up, only 1 was connected to crime. Similarly, on CNN, an American media source, none of the first 8 articles were connected to crime. On the other hand, when looking at Croatian and Hungarian sources, on 24sata.hr, out of the first 8 articles, 5 out of 8 were connected to crime, and on origo.hu, 6 out of 8 were connected to crime. This brief media analysis supported what our interviewees said about the taboos surrounding psychedelics in Eastern Europe. This inspired us to dig even deeper and consult individuals and institutions who actively participate in the discourse around psychedelics to learn more about their status in Eastern Europe.
Hrvatske kao i brojne druge zemlje pa istočne Europe, jugoistočne Europe, više je zakonodavca briga što će narod misliti o tom što on legalizira, nego uzima li to narod, je li to potrebno, je li to medicinski adekvatno i slično. Dakle, ajmo reći, puno je bitnije što se kaže nego što se napravi.
This is Ratko Martinović. He's a Croatian journalist, book author, activist, and the host of the podcast Incubator. He's known for his passion for psychedelics, so we reached out to him to get more insight about how relevant are the medical, neo-spiritual, and success discourse in Eastern Europe.
Dakle, legislativa je problem jer znanstvenik bi htio nešto napraviti, ali mu zakon to onemogućava, otežava ili bi u krajnjem slučaju možda dobio mogućnost da to napravi, ali ne bi imao od koga dobiti samu supstancu, jer ne postoji institucija koja će mu dati suhu tvar neke biljke da bi on radio istraživanje. Pa ima je sigurno, ajmo reći teže je nego vani zato što je potrebna preporuka, znači treba netko ko je već bio na određenoj ceremoniji, dakle ono što kažem po mom mišljenju jedan od problema je taj što se i u Hrvatskoj, a i po zapadnoj Europi većinom prakticiraju nekakve tradicije koje su iz drugih kontinenta, najčešće logično Južna Amerika, sad je popularne ove sjevernoameričke ceremonije tipa peotl, dakle meskalinski kaktus i slično, dok ove naše biljke zbog inkvizicije, Maja za vještice i neke slične stvari iz prošlosti su gotovo potpuno se zatrte. Ono sam nešto malo prije rekao, recimo mandragora, mislim da je široj publici poznata po Harry Potteru najviše. Najpotentnija mandragora je daleko najpotentnija iz Dubrovačkog zaleđa. Dubrovačko zaleđe i taj sjeverni dio, sjeverozapadni dio Crne Gore, što znači da je, s obzirom na količinu biljaka na toj jednoj planini, odnosno mislim da je planina u biti, dokazuju da je neko kultivirao tu biljku. Da imamo recimo i ove ostale biljke, bunika, bun, pa evo datura, koje su sve vele bilja, odnosno atropa peladona, koja je tamo Kvarner, Gorski kotar, dakle te mračne psihodelije Europe dosta uobičajene u Hrvatskoj, rekao bi čak i da je kultivirana, što znači da su nekakav narod u denoj prošlosti koristio i sadio značajne količine zato što su im bile potrebne. Moje mišljenje da su to iliri recimo, jer ne vidimo kasnije ni da od ovih Hrvatskog kraljevstva pa ni kasnije Austro-Ugarske ne vidimo apsolutno nikakve dokaze da koriste te biljke. Pa mislim da smo mi najviše platili tu žestoku kristijanizaciju i žestoku inkviziciju. Mislim da to gotovo potpunosti uništilo ta drevna znanja, odnosno recepte. U Rusiji još kako tako sibirski šamanizam primjenjuje emanitu muskariju putem mokraće od sobova. Tradicija je zadržana i mislim da to je još jedan od rijetkih primjera, osim Baltika gdje je recimo u Litvi je i dan danas religija koja također koristi muharu, odnosno emanitu muskariju Romova. Mislim da je Litva jedina europska država gdje je premijer pripadnik jedne poganske religije, dakle, što je vrlo zanimljivo isto, da zove se Romova ta religija. I mislim da je Litva i Rusija i Finska i to je više manje to, dakle ovi svi ostali koji su bili šamanistički jaki se zapravo stide te tradicije i rekao bi da bilo ko da se bavi s takvim stvarima bi ga proglasili u medijima, satanistom i slično, dakle i crkva bi ga vrlo brzo bi ga etiketirala pa iz tog razloga tog straha.
After talking to Ratko, who mentioned that it is the legislation that's the problem, I've decided to also talk to somebody who has a more skeptic view on psychedelics, to explain why the legislation is the way that it is. So I reached out to the government's office for the suppression of the misuse of drugs. I set up a meeting with Mr. Željko Petković, who is the deputy director of the office, to talk about why there is not a lot of discourse around psychedelics overall, and how is the discourse affected by the policies that his office puts in place. However, upon arrival, Mr. Petković refused filming, as he'll only be giving his personal opinion and does not want his words to be used as a statement from the office as a whole. Still, the meeting was pretty interesting. During the discussion, Mr. Petković outlined two justifications for the illegal status of psychedelics. Firstly, he said that he has doubts about whether Croatia is economically ready for fully opening the cannabis and psychedelic industry, and I think this economic concern goes for other Eastern European states as well. Secondly, he mentioned that even though research shows that mushrooms and other types of psychedelics are less dangerous than alcohol or tobacco, alcohol and tobacco are too integrated into our culture, and banning them is simply not an option due to the tradition and the lobby from these industries. However, that does not mean it is desirable to add more drugs to the category of socially accepted ones, as once you make something publicly accepted, there's usually no going back. Therefore, from a public health perspective, Mr. Petković believes that psychedelics will do less harm while on the illegal side of the law. Apart from these two arguments, we've also talked about the medical and research discourse in terms of the legislation. What Mr. Petković said is that actually there are some exemptions from the general law, which means that psychedelic substances can be used for research and to treat patients. Still, no such research has taken place, which either indicates that no researcher in Croatia is interested in the subject, or that it is too difficult for a researcher to get permission for such experiments. And for things like this, it is up to the viewer to decide which is the more likely scenario out of the two.
Overall, we found that for the medical discourse, although there can be legal exceptions for scientists and doctors in some states, there are not many researchers actively studying these substances, so there is virtually no discourse around them. Similarly, there is also a taboo around the neo-spiritual discourse when compared to Western countries. The general image portrayed by our interviewees based on their experiences from their home countries was either negative or absent.
When it comes to the success discourse, most people in Eastern Europe don't want to be associated with psychedelics, as they fear getting labeled as something they're not. Conversely, in Western Europe, some of the richest people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates openly admit to psychedelic use. One other potential reason for this lack of discourse could be due to Eastern Europe's relatively recent socialist and communist doctrines, where people are not eager to spread such capitalist-based discourses focusing on enhancing private businesses.
So why is our research important? Well, it is just another example of the differentiation of discourse between Eastern and Western Europe. This mini-documentary doesn't argue whether the lack of discourse in Eastern Europe is a good or bad thing, but simply points out that next to issues like women's, LGBTQ and minority rights, the East and the West are also not on the same page about psychedelics. So when researchers or journalists engage in this topic or create concrete policy proposals, these proposals need to remain contextualized. If these proposals are generalized, this may bring a ton of academic debate in Western Europe, but it could be detrimental to a scientist's career in the East.
Therefore, the most important takeaway from this project is that context matters. Due to the discrepancy in the discourse around psychedelics between Western and Eastern Europe, some policy proposals will work in the West while being too radical for the East, and some policies will bring little progress to the West while being perfectly appropriate for the East. So, again, context matters.